Hi, welcome to the SG Child Show. I'm your host, SG Child, and today I have a guest he's from Arizona. I don't know why that matters since we're here on Zoom together, but it's so nice to have you here this evening. This is Gramps Jeffrey, and he is an author, and we're going to talk about children's books and the story behind the book and kind of just get an understanding and a exciting talk about the things that he has going on. So thank you so much for your time this evening.
Oh, SJ, appreciate you inviting me so much.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think I saw you on either the podcast guests directory or through a social media probably and reached out. But, whenever I see something that I know will be a good fit for my viewers, I always try to reach out because I just love providing the value that I know that they want. So thank you so much. And tell us about yourself, and then we'll talk about your authorness and all the good stuff.
Oh, no problem. As you said, I live here in Scottsdale, Arizona. I am now a children's author. I was really in the business world most of my life. My first book was a book called The Secrets of Retailing: How to Beat Walmart. It was the one that I wrote when I was heavy into business. That's what that book looks like there. And this book was written for entrepreneurs and small businesses to compete against the big guys. How do you survive and thrive against the big guys? And so that book is a step-by-step guide, 15 different chapters. Everything from how do you hire people to what do you do to find locations, and how do you find products, and how do you market online? How do you market just regular ways? And the last chapter is how do you exit your business? So that was my first foray into writing. Was when I was an entrepreneur and started a couple of businesses, of which when I took public, then that was it. So now I am into writing children's books. And my first one is I Don't Want to Turn 3.
Yeah. And is that from personal experience? Do you have grandchildren?
Oh yeah, living this past year because of the pandemic that was caused by the COVID-19 in isolation, and except for being with my family, gave me a special time to watch, interact, with all my grandkids. I got to tell you what a trip that was. All six of these kids, are completely different personalities. The one thing that they do have in common is their sense of curiosity. How excited they get when they do accomplish something, watching them grow year to year and how they interact, with each other is really the basis for this book. Because what goes through a toddler's mind, with the parents so desperate to understand, when does a toddler understand the difference between me and us? This book explores how a family kind of finds all that out together.
Oh, I love that idea. I don't think that that's something that we just kind of find ourselves working our way through those things, right? Rather than having a little bit of a guide or an idea of what we should know going through those time periods with toddlers. So that's a fascinating kind of perspective that you were able to have.
Well, as a baby boomer myself, trying to understand the world how it's evolved since I was 3 years old. It's also part of the story.
Yeah.
My parents, they didn't have cell phones. My parents didn't have the internet. They didn't have cable TV. They didn't have remotes. I was my dad's remote. His son, go change the channel. I was his remote. So my parents' definition of discipline is quite different from the parents of today. Has the day's world made for a better place for us to they'll grow up and raise these kids? I'll let your listeners kind of answer that question.
Isn't that true? I think that's probably personal to every person, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Whether it's been a good or bad experience. Yeah. But hopefully we're doing better. More we know, the better we can do, right? Thus giving us an insight into this toddler mind.
Yeah, and we were just talking about discipline. Think about the discipline, how it's evolved. When I was a little, I grew up in the 50s and 60s. And so my parents were part of the greatest generation. They're the ones that went through the Depression. They're the ones that saved the world in World War II. Very disciplined generation. Right. And that's how they brought us up. When my brother Larry and I, if we messed up during the day, my mother would say, "Wait till your dad gets home." And My dad would come home, he'd whip out his belt, he would chase us around the kitchen table, and that was discipline back then.
Yeah.
In fact, he had this paddle that he had, a fraternity paddle that he also used on us. And one night my parents were out of the house, and my brother and I, was late fall, and we lived in Ohio, and the leaves were on the ground, and we grabbed his paddle and we buried it in the leaves.
Oh.
And then the next night it snowed. And so we went back out that spring. The paddle was gone. It was a miracle. It was just that's the way, that was discipline back then. Now, we as a generation hopefully learned from that. And as we grew with our kids, we talked to them more. We explained things more to them. And then now this generation who's raising the 2-year-olds of today, they're even better. They send them to timeout. They get them a chance to really understand, and the kids understand being away from their friends. So it's a whole different world of discipline today. In fact, I was at my daughter Grace's 3rd birthday a couple of weeks ago in Austin, Texas. And, she had gotten all these trucks for her birthday, and she has a 4.5-year-old brother. And they were playing with the trucks, and all of a sudden they were fighting over the trucks and stealing it. And she looks at him and she says, I need my space. And she actually walked over to one side of the sofa, and he looks at her and she says, I need my space too. And he walks over to the other side of the sofa. Now, they didn't learn that on the internet, or they didn't see that on television. I am sure their mother got so frustrated one day and looked at the two of them and said, I need my space, and walks away. But that's a great way. That's a great way to discipline kids too.
Yeah, absolutely. All by example and by showing them, the importance of human respect, really. When we give each other respect and we give our kids respect and show them that, and I completely get it. My dad is an Army, or excuse me, what is he going to do? He better never listen to this. He is an Air Force, a retired Air Force general, and he is, very disciplined, and I'm an only child. So I completely understand that everything was on me to be perfect at all the times. and any time of a drop of a dime, right, I had to be on my good, best everything. And so there's this high pressure. Then I have a 22-year-old, a 10 and a 12-year-old. And so the 22-year-old, who's my stepdaughter, boy, I really recognize now the difference I can do with these younger two. And the mistakes I made in not creating the right type of a relationship with her through doing all of those scare tactic disciplinary kind of things, that's how I learned. That's how I thought it was supposed to be done, right? That's what we do. We go into things with the knowledge we have, and then when we know, we can do better.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess the real theme of my book, I Don't Want to Turn 3, is, at what age do you begin to actually take responsibility for your actions? Is it 3 years old? Is it 13? Is it 23? Again, being a baby boomer, I've got plenty of people who are 63 years old that still don't take responsibility for their actions. So that's really the theme of the book is how do we mold these kids to be able to start to understand all of that?
Yeah, definitely. What are some lessons you're learning from yours now?
Well, the one thing I have learned is that it's necessary to teach children how to think, not what to think. Okay. They'll learn over life what to think, but when they're 2, 3, 4 years old, we have to teach them how to think. And the best way to do that is through reading books with them, making books part of their routine. Obviously I want them to read my book, but there's 100 other great books out there that we should be reading to them. Yeah. And if you think about it, we're teaching them how to think. If we get them in the habit, if we read books to our kids every night before they go to bed, there's all kinds of benefits to reading to kids. One of the benefits is just the bonding with the child. Yeah. If I'm a grandfather and I've got the child sitting on my lap, we just as a chance for 20 minutes to spend time together, the actual bond together. So, that's one of the things that's created by reading with the kids. Another thing is it supports listening skills. You and I both know that as we grow older, listening skills are the best skills that we can develop. I mean, you're a podcaster. You have to listen. That's a skill you have to have.
Yeah.
Listening skills are important if we're selling things, if we're communicating about things. So if we can ingrain into these little kids when they're 2, 3, 4 years old by sitting there and spending time reading books with them, how to listen, it's going to pay off for them down the road. I mean, another reason why we should be reading books to our kids is because of all the cognitive and language development. There are plenty of words in these books these kids don't understand, so it gives you a chance to explain to these kids. It gives you a chance to really communicate. I mean, there's plenty of these words in the books I don't understand. I got to go look at. But it gives us a chance to really work with these young children and we get to help them start to learn language. And another reason is the attention span that you get for 20 minutes. It's going to concentrate and self-discipline. Little kids, they bounce off the wall all day long. You get them in your lap for 20 minutes, give them a chance to have a creative attention span. It's going to pay off for them down the road.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's really great advice for any of our, listeners that are grandparents that really take advantage of these times. But especially for, new parents that have toddlers that, what do I do? There's so much screens available and all of these things. Like, take the time to make these connections with your kids. There's one thing to see that a child wants attention. It's another thing to realize that they're wanting connection. And I think that's a big lesson for parents to learn, is that usually when a child is seeking attention, it is for a reason for making a connection. And if they can give themselves a little bit more grace and discipline as parents to recognize that and take that time for, take advantage of that time and not take for granted the time that they're going to be little kids, but to really act upon it and make the right choices for them.
That's very well said. When you think about it, this is going to be the greatest generation this country has ever produced. I mean, when these kids that are 1 to 10 years old, as soon as they come out of the womb, they're on the internet. They're in electronics. I mean, I didn't know anything about the internet until I was 40 years old.
Right? 20 something, exactly.
Yeah. So these kids, I mean, they're immediately come out and they know about technology and all that and how to use it. So we've got to make sure they understand that technology is there so that they can help them achieve their goals. And, going back to how we as adults need to offset this. In other words, the technology is great. They need to learn it because, again, they're going to be the greatest. But we've got to get them back to reality, too. We've got to get into what's really right and wrong. And going back to the, reading the books and going back to that, it's necessary for us to teach children how to think. Now, think about how we can teach them how to think. Before you even read a book with a child, first of all, let them pick out the book. Everybody's got 20 books laying around. Let the kid pick out the book so they have ownership initially when they're looking at a book. Before you even begin reading, you say to them, what do you think is going to happen in this book? Again, teaching to think. We want to teach them to think. And then as they're, going through the book and reading the book, what are the characters in the book? Who are they? What is the setting? Does anything sound familiar to you? Is this fantasy? Is this something you see in your world? Keep questioning them. And then much like we should be doing every night at dinner time, ask them how their day was and what did they learn. Ask them after you're reading the book, what was your favorite part of this book? Why was it your favorite part? Again, we as adults, we need to teach them to question. And if we question them, that's how they're going to learn.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. My husband and daughter are dyslexic. And so reading for us has been something that's challenging to enjoy for, my husband, not so much, because once he finds a good book, you won't see him for a week. But on the other hand, my 10-year-old, it was just recently, like within the last 3 months it was the first time that I actually seen her in a book. Finally found one that an author, it was like the Goosebumps series or whatever. It's a mystery. And the first time that I finally, she, just has the confidence now through the tutoring and the resources and tools we've been teaching her to help her take her time to enjoy reading. Because there's one thing, there's just some kids that unfortunately need a little bit more assistance. And so that's really great to have both perspectives available for them so that they know that, number one, reading to them is so wonderful because it really starts that love of books and love of storytelling. And then again, having them choose the books, taking control, making them feel like I have a part of this. I'm a part of this is really empowering for them.
Yeah, when you think about it, this pandemic has our kids reading less. According to the United Nations, the Education, Scientific, Cultural Organization, the UNESCO part of the United Nations, they're saying that there are 584 million children worldwide who are now experiencing reading difficulties. Now, before the pandemic, that number was 460 million. So that's a 20% increase. That wipes out 2 decades of educational gains around the world that was caused by the pandemic. The Stanford Graduation School of Education released a study saying that the second and third graders' reading fluency is now 30% behind what is expected in a typical year. So on top of everything else that we've been talking about, with these kids not being able to go to school, get to normal, they are way behind in their reading.
Absolutely.
We as a family have got to jump in and help these kids. It takes a village to raise a child, especially in single parent homes and where you have to rely on the grandma and the grandpa and the aunt and the uncle and the cousin. It takes a village, and more than ever today, this village has got to rise and get involved in these kids' lives.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth? And I hope that all the families, that are listening and, already are involved. And maybe if families that, live on your street or in your community that could use a little bit of help to get more involved, invite them to a library function or possibly, send them to Gramps website so that they can check out some good books to get to their, bring home to read with everybody. Yeah, there's so many ways that we can encourage. And another thing that brings to mind for me is really finding out at this very, very critical stage in your child's learning, their learning style, whether that is auditory or visually or more hand over hand and watching, because you can still create those boundaries of ways and teaching them how to think, especially when you know how they learn best. So it's critical to look at those things too when implementing the learning style you're going to do with those children. And it's so individualized to each kid.
Yeah, never lose sight that you are these kids' role models. Yeah. They imitate you. So if you're on your cell phone all day long, I can tell you they're going to be on their cell phone all day long. They do whatever you say. I mean, if you say a cuss word in front of your child, I can guarantee you're going to hear that same word 4 more times that day. Now the way to offset that is obviously you slip out and do something like that is start talking about good things like blueberries and bananas and dinosaurs and so on. They'll forget about that. But they are going to repeat that. So you are the role model. Never lose sight of that. What you do is what they imitate. And so just be very conscious as you're raising your kids.
Definitely. Absolutely. I love that advice. I think that's really great because people do lose sight. I'm probably guilty of that in just overworking, getting wrapped up in my work and being on my computer and all when I wake up before I go to bed, those kinds of things. So definitely check in with yourself, check in with your family, the habits you have and come together. Tell us a lesson that's maybe learned in the book, or what was your favorite part in the book when you were writing it?
Now, this book is a true story. I don't want to turn 3, and it's based on a true story where the kids don't learn to share and they fight over things. And then finally, the father and the mother, who are the heroes in this book, pull them together to start talk about what the issues are. And Olivia, who is the 8-year-old, the oldest, she comes up with the idea that they should give all their toys and all the gifts that they've gotten to the homeless kids downtown. And that actually happened. So that's how this book is based on a true story. The pictures in the book are actual pictures that I took. I sent them to the illustrator to kind of make them more cartoonish. And so, they're all pictures that actually happen. So that's what's so fun about this book. Because I think it happens in every single family in the world. Sure. You got these same wrestling with the same issues, and how do you morally bring up a better child?
Oh, I love that. I'm so glad that you have decided to, take part on this endeavor and really help parents and grandparents. It's so nice to have a grandparent perspective. I think that that's something that we need to lean on more, is grandparents that want to see their grandparent or their grandchildren, be the best that they can be. And they see that this society is a place where, like you said, it's at their fingertips, and we need to give them the right information to have there and be a good role model for them as parents. And so thank you so much for your work you're doing in the community.
Oh, well, let's talk about grandparents right now.
Yes.
All right. 30% of grandparents, of baby boomers my age, 30% are classified as being remote. And this is what the remote means basically is that they really aren't involved in their grandchildren's lives. They may see them or talk to them on their birthday. They may see them during a holiday, but they really don't care. Think about it. This is 1 out of every 3 of the people my age. They really don't want to get involved. They figured, well, I raised a good kid. Let them worry about it. I got my other priorities. That's a big number. And those we've got to figure out how to get these people back involved in their grandkids' lives, because with us missing a third of the grandparents that don't really want to get involved, that's a miss for these kids.
Yeah, it certainly is. I can attest to that with personal experience, unfortunately, how much they don't even know that it affects them, because they don't know what they're missing, basically, and what, the loss that they have. And it's until you come across a friend, that has a great relationship, and then they start to think, well, what the heck? What's wrong with me? What did I? And then they may internalize those types of things. So smart information to maybe even have a conversation with your kid when they're old enough to, conceptualize those types of ideas.
Well, the other thing is grandparents sometimes cause this. Okay, it's not always the kid. I mean, there's all kinds of things that they can do, that they divide the spouses, they divide the parents on what they think. If grandparents issue unsolicited advice by telling the parents what to do, that kills a relationship. Because they do that. If they disrespect boundaries and just show up unannounced in the kid's house, that causes issues. So grandparents cause some of this too, but we got to figure out how to work this through, because we need these grandparents in their lives.
Yeah, it really is. When, as you can look back to see how much more involved like families used to be, and they're a lot more scattered about today, aren't they?
Well, taking my family as an example, when I grew up, it was great. My uncle lived up the street. My grandmother lived 2 blocks away, and we had a whole family together. Well, here I am. I'm living in Arizona. I've got 2 of my grandkids here. I've got 2 in Austin, Texas. I got 2 in Orlando, Florida. Okay, they're all scattered. So, luckily for us, what we did to try to rein that all in is we had them in our house all together for 6 weeks. So the kids got very familiar with our house and everything. And for some reason, there's a language for 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old kids called dinosaurs. They all love dinosaurs. They talk dinosaurs. They can, even though whether part of your family or their friends, they can explain all the different names. They know these long names of dinosaurs before they know other words.
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned, dinosaurs, small, medium, and large, but they know who eats meat and all that. So we found the commonality of all these grandkids was dinosaurs. So when the other kids went back to their houses in Orlando and in Austin, we decided, how are we as grandparents going to keep in touch with them?
Yeah.
How are they going to remember who we are? So we decided that every night we got a half a dozen dinosaurs in our house. Every night we were going to have the dinosaurs do something different around the house. So one night they were in the refrigerator eating blueberries. Another night the dinosaurs were by the sink with grandma washing dishes with soap on their noses. Another night they were playing the piano. Another night they were walking up the steps. So we had 50 different nights of where our dinosaurs were doing something different inside our house and outside our house. And since the kids were here, they could relate to it. So we became part of their routine. And what happened was, the kids in Orlando and Austin, they would have their baths by their mom and dad. Their mom and dad would read them a book. And then the kids would say, what are the dinosaurs doing tonight? And they would call grandma on her iPhone. We get them on FaceTime. Where's Gramps? Where's Gramps? What are the dinosaurs doing tonight? So we had a chance to connect, and we used the idea of dinosaurs. I'm sure your listeners have other ways that they connect with their family when they're so remote like that.
Yeah.
And it was our way of staying in touch because they weren't living down the street.
So smart. That's wonderful advice for grandparents that live remotely to be able to keep that connection going, because it is so important that our kids not only feel like their parents, love and care about them, but that their grandparents have an interest and care for them and their future as well. So true.
Yeah. You got to remember that, when you're remote, kids don't pick up the phone to call you. They're involved in their own little world. So the grandparents have got to get involved to make that happen.
Yeah. I love that you said that. I think it's important for people to take accountability when they are certain ages to make sure that they're, complying with what they should be. Exactly. Yeah. And how special do you feel now that you've created these relationships with these kids who want to have a relationship with you?
Oh yeah, it's the difference. It's the best way to grow old.
Oh, I love that. Well, I can wait, but can't wait, right? I have a 22-year-old, but I could still wait to have a grandchild for a few more years. But still, I think that my husband and I agree that we will, just like we have in our parenting, be the best we can be better than we ever had or could be for our children and grandchildren. And it's really a special way to spend our time doing that together.
Well, when you think about going back to the thought that it's necessary for us to teach children how to think, there's one question that I wish everybody would ask their child every single day. And that question is, what did you do today that was nice to someone else? Now, when you think about it, if you ask that question, I've got 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds. They're fighting over toys. They're stealing stuff from each other, and then you say to the little kid, "What did you do today that was nice to someone else?" The first time you say that, they're going to look at you and say, "What are we talking about?" But if you ask that to them every single day, then all of a sudden they're going to say, well, I got to come up with an answer for mom and dad. I got to do something nice. So maybe they'll open the door for someone. Maybe they'll help an old lady across the street. Maybe they will share their toys with their cousins or their friends. But think about that. If we could have every family ask that question, what did you do today that was nice to someone else, every single day? Can you imagine in another 20 years how that would change this country?
Gosh, it would be so beautiful to practice that. It is what is needed and what is necessary. So like you said, the best thing we can do is, by the old quote, I don't even know who said it, be the change we want to see in the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because, we create the curiosity in these kids, and that builds their imagination. And these kids grow up to be the entrepreneurs of tomorrow and come up with great ideas of how to fix this world.
Yeah, that's for sure. Our 12-year-old, he is autistic, and he has just recently, I don't even know where he was listening to this, but he just told my husband today that he was going to be the president of the United States someday. And he says, I think I'll do that. I'll be the president of the United States someday. We're like, do it, please. Yeah, add a little neurodiversity to this country. See if we, what we can come up with there. I think that would be brilliant. So I encourage your kids to follow their dreams, no matter how much you may not agree or may not see that their value. They certainly should be able to find their own way and find their own, love of life and things. And, start by reading to your kids and helping them to find a love of books early on. Tell us before you go where we can find the book and your website and all of the good places. And of course, I'll have all of the links in the description and everywhere to find it.
Absolutely. You can find it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, about 100 other sites, or come to my site. It's grampsjeffrey.com. Or the I don't want to turn 3.com site. But if any of your listeners want to continue this conversation, please have them reach out to me at grampsjeffrey@gmail.com. I'd love to continue talking about this.
I love that. And, if you have any other events or books that you decide to come up with in the future as you're gaining all this other new perspective of older children, let me know so that we can have you back on for sure.
Well, what's interesting about books in the future is I'm working on I Don't Want to Turn 4. But my granddaughter, Olivia, who just turned 9, came to me. She says, I got a great idea for our next book. I said, what's that? She says, I don't want to turn 10. And I said, you don't want to turn 10? Why don't you want to turn 10? And she says, well, I'm going to have to learn how to drive pretty soon. I said, that's another 7 years away. Why are you worried about it now? And then she says, I got to start thinking about college. I said, that's 9 years away. Why are you worried about it now? But when you think about it, we all have things we worry about. I don't want to turn 40. I don't want to turn 70.
Yeah.
So, that's a whole different genre we can go after.
I love that. They sound like such great kids. I'm so happy for you and your family. And it sounds like, you're giving them all the best kind of support that you can. So what a pleasure meeting you today and having you on the show. I'm certainly glad that we spent the time to do this. So thank you so, so much.
Oh, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. And we'll definitely be in touch.